Good morning, everyone. I hope you're good. Welcome to Thursday's lesson. Today is our last lesson this week looking at structure in our Literature Paper 1 text. Well done for engaging with this content. I know it's hard, and in an ideal world, I would have taught this to you in person. Don't worry if you haven't wrapped your head around it just yet. We're going to return to this a lot over the next couple of months and year, so do not worry if you haven't managed to grasp it fully. Today we are going to use our knowledge of structure in Frankenstein from yesterday's lesson to embed that into an analytical response. So before we get into that, can you please pause the video now and return when you copy down the title, the date, and the learning objective. Please come back when you've got those three things written down. Okay, if you're back, that means that you are ready to complete the do now. So today is slightly different. There is a knowledge organizer on Show My Homework. You may have a copy of this knowledge organizer. If you don't, open the one on Show My Homework. And what I would like you to do is write 5 quotes down that take place during the creation's narrative. So the first step is to figure out when the creation's narrative begins and ends, and then jot down 5 quotes from that period. Pause the video, complete that task, and come back when you've got that jotted down. Okay, so with Macbeth, we did the process where I briefly planned and wrote a paragraph analysing iambic pentameter, and then you did one on your own. And we're going to do the same today. So I'm going to write a paragraph with a focus on analysing structure, and then you're going to go and write your own paragraph. I know we do a lot of paragraph writing, but ultimately you need to be in good habits and you need to practice your timings. So essay writing and paragraph writing is going to take up most of our lesson time. Okay, before we get into this extract and my paragraph plan based on this, can you pause the video and copy the title down now, please? Okay, so it's worth mentioning at this stage that when you get a question for Frankenstein in the GCSE exam, it probably won't be this simple. There might be kind of a phrase or a statement, or there might just be kind of an adjective added on that you need to support. So how does Shelley present the creation as vengeful, for example? However, the purpose of this lesson is kind of solely focusing on structure, so this question is suitable. So I'm imagining that I've opened up the question paper and this is the extract that I can see. The first step would obviously be to read it. So let's do that now. How can I describe my emotions at this catastrophe, or how delineate the wretch whom with such infinite pains and care I had endeavoured to form? His limbs were in proportion, and I had selected his features as beautiful. Beautiful, great God! His yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath. His hair was of a lustrous black and flowing, his teeth of a pearly whiteness, but these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes, that seemed almost of the same colour as the dun white sockets in which they were set, his shrivelled complexion and straight black lips. The different accidents of life are not so changeable as the feelings of human nature. I had worked hard for nearly 2 years for the sole purpose of infusing life into an inanimate body. For this I deprived myself of rest and health. I desired it with ardour that far exceeded moderation. But now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished, and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. Unable to endure the aspect of the being I had created, I rushed out of the room. So this extract is, incredibly famous. We've looked at this multiple times. It is from chapter 5. So I know that already. So obviously at this point, I would map out my character arc, and I would place the extract as one of my 3 paragraphs. For this one, I would probably put it paragraph 1. Like I said in the Macbeth video, our focus isn't on planning, so I'm not going to spend time now figuring out these other 2 paragraphs, because that is not the focus of this video. We're not writing a full essay, but I just want to remind you that this is what you would do. Then I would choose maybe a couple of quotes, short quotes, that I would include in my paragraph. So there's loads here that you could do. I particularly kind of like this bit here. The beauty of the dream vanished, and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. I would probably also, I quite like maybe the kind of term wretch as well, because that's something that's used quite consistently to describe the creation, so I can kind of talk about that repetition throughout. Alright, so with Macbeth, I would say at this point you need to identify if it's in iambic pentameter or what meter it is in. For this, I would need to consider primarily whose narrative point of view are we hearing this event through. Obviously, this is Victor's narrative point of view. So I'm just going to write Victor POV. Hearing it from Victor's point of view is going to be drastically different. We know that hearing things from different characters' points of views changes the way we view things. At this point, really, we can only hear it from Victor because the creation has just woken up. But this is something that we're going to analyse in our paragraph. So, this is the structure that we use. Remember, again, we are doing 2 idea sentences, but a greater focus on our analysis. That is where we're kind of, focusing majority of our time when writing a paragraph. So I'm going to use that extract, that quote, those quotes that we highlighted to complete a paragraph. So, we know how to write points, we're good at this, so I'm going to write at the beginning of the novel, Shelley presents the creation as, and now I need my idea to answer the question, so I'm going to say as a victim of prejudice. Instantly we know that because of the reaction of the creation, so the reaction of the creator, so through Victor's terrified and disgusted reaction, we'll say. That is my clear idea done. Now I can move on to an embedded quotation. Remember, I need to explain what is happening, who is involved, and embed a tone word. So I'm going to say when he manages to animate the creation, Victor exclaims in horror that, and now I'm going to use short bursts of quotations. Remember, I said that it's important to embed enough quotations to give you enough to analyse. If I was just to embed wretch, that doesn't give me enough to analyse. I need to embed more. In horror that the beauty of the dream had vanished. In horror that the beauty of the dream had vanished as he looked at the wretch and beauty, not beauty in horror, and disgust. Is it horror and disgust or disgust and horror? Horror and disgust, I think. Horror and disgust filled his heart. The original quote is horror and disgust filled my heart, so I've just taken the his out of the quote. That's my embedded quotation. Now it's time for my 2 idea sentence. So this not only conveys Victor's unjustified, I would say, prejudice at this point. He doesn't know this creation, but his instant reaction is quite, I can imagine, harmful, and we know it's quite harmful. This not only conveys Victor's unjustified prejudice, but also highlights how the creation will become, will experience othering. So if you are othered, you are made to feel like an other, like you are not accepted, you are not human, you are not part of something. So we'll experience othering. So it's kind of the same, it can kind of link to the ideas of isolation. So those are my two ideas. So now I need to analyse word, method or tone. So I'm going to look at, let's look at the phrase. So Shelley's use of the phrase horror and disgust, and now I need to link that to an idea. So I've got the idea about Victor's unjustified prejudice, and I also have the kind of experience of othering or unfair treatment. So I'm just going to highlight those for the sake of the video so you can see how I'm linking my analysis back to those ideas. So I'm going to write Shelley's use of the phrase horror and disgust highlights, I'm going to link it to prejudice, Victor's repulsion and prejudice as he is judging his own creation solely on its appearance. Now I could leave it that. It wouldn't be very developed. So I'm now going to talk about structure. I'm going to link this to the fact that we're hearing this from Victor's point of view, and therefore what does that suggest? What does that emphasize? So I'm going to write the narrative point of view here emphasizes, I'm saying that what I'm about to write emphasizes my original point about Victor's repulsion and prejudice. The narrative point of view here emphasizes Victor's maybe like raw emotion as he views, sorry, I'm actually going to change this around. The narrative point of view exposes Victor's raw emotions here and emphasizes the way in which he views the creation as lesser, solely based on the maybe like the fact that maybe he hasn't met his expectations, based on the fact that the creation hasn't met Victor's high expectations, or maybe like on a, yeah, I'm going to say high expectations actually. The narrative point of view exposes Victor's raw emotions here and emphasises the way in which he views the creation as lesser, solely based on the fact that the creation hasn't met Victor's high expectations. All right, now I'm going to analyse tone, I think. So I'm going to change to red because I'm going to analyse tone based on that second idea about othering. So Victor may have said this quote in a horrified tone. remember we're using may because we don't actually know, and we are using the same tone word as we've used in our embedded quotation. Victor may have said this quote in a horrified tone to convey the unfair treatment of the creation. And how the creation will be continuous, and Victor may have said this quote in a horrified tone to convey the unfair treatment of the creation, establishing how the creation will be continuously othered as a result of the judgment of his character based on his outward appearance. Victor may have said this quote in a horrified tone to convey the unfair treatment of the creation, especially how the creation will be instantly othered as a result of the judgment of his character based on his outward appearance. I'm going to now make a link to a piece of context, my understanding of the contextual setting of the novel. So I'm going to write, it seems as though Victor has realised his failure, which may highlight Shelley's, now I'm bringing back in the author's ideas, Shelley's perspective on the tension between science and religion in the Victorian era. We have touched on this before, we will look at it in more detail, but the idea that kind of science and religion were at odds, and that kind of age-old tension as to kind of who has the most power and who has the right to kind of give and take life between science and religion in the Victorian era. It seems that Victor has realised his failure, which may highlight Shelley's perspective on the tension between, and I'm just going to write, man cannot play God. This is kind of one of her messages, and doing so will lead to chaos. Okay, now that's my analysis. So again, consider how much of the paragraph my analysis takes up. It should be the predominant part of my paragraph. Now I'm going to link. So I'm going to link the idea that prejudice has consequences is supported. I'm going to say later in the text. Again, I'm writing this quite easily because I know what quote I'm going to pick because I know the text well. So again, just to reiterate the importance of your knowledge of the text. When the creation murders William and gazed on his victim with hellish triumph, which highlights the creation's desire for revenge due to the continuous prejudice. And then I'm going to reinforce my writer's message. Remember, we would have had the thesis before this point, and that would have included my writer's message. So I'm going to imagine that my message would be something like this. Therefore, Shelley may be trying to convey that prejudice always has consequences. And then I'm going to link that specifically to my paragraph through Victor's bias and the severe impact this has on his creation. So just to touch on the idea of bias here, that links again to the narrative point of view. If you're hearing an event or an opinion of an event through one character's perspective, there's going to be bias because you're only hearing one side of the story. It's the same as if you were to hear a rumour at school and you only asked one person. You only asked one person, that would only be one side of the story. But if you were to ask the other person, you would gain a greater knowledge and understanding of the scenario. So that is my paragraph, and in that paragraph I have included analysis of the narrative point of view. So now it's your turn. So you're going to use the same structure, and you're going to use this extract here as the focus of your paragraph. I'm not going to give you where this extract is from in the text because I want you to figure it out. I want you to test your knowledge. Remember, the focus is to include analysis of the narrative point of view linked to one of your ideas. Okay, I will email you back saying that the paragraph is incomplete if there is no link to a narrative point of view and what that suggests. It's important to notice before this task that this paragraph is from the creation's point of view. This can give you a comparison between Victor's point of view and the creation's point of view. What do we learn? What do we understand? How does it change our perspective of the situation and the relationship between the creator and the creation? That is what you want to touch upon in your analysis. So when you've completed that, make sure that you come back to the video and I will explain to you what I want you to do next. Okay, your paragraph should be complete, and that means it's time to submit your work. Again, I am begging you, please, please, please put the date in the subject of the email. People just send me emails like English work, English work, English work. So when it comes to tracking, it's very hard for me to figure out which lesson is which. If you're sending 2 lessons in one email, that's fine. Just put English lesson 1 and 2 and then the 2 dates. Okay, it's very, very, very important. I look forward to seeing your analysis of structure, and I will send you a little bit of feedback when you send that to my email. Tomorrow's lesson is kind of independent, so enjoy, and I will speak to you after half term. Have a lovely, lovely week. Well done for all of your hard work.